We are now live. Public Works Committee meeting for Monday, April 4th, 2022. Sound check.
And we are live, but still waiting for quorum.
Thank you, Clerk. For Public Works Committee members, there is a test vote. If you hit voting in progress, you can register it there on eScribe. Just waiting for confirmation of quorum before we get started for this afternoon's meeting.
Councillor Nam, we now have quorum.
Excellent.
My apologies, everyone.
No worries,
I had
Councillor.
a meeting on site.
2 minutes and we're ready to roll. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this Public Works Committee meeting to order. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live on the City of Hamilton website and temporarily archived there as well. Presentations and reports being considered at this meeting are available on the city's website, and members of the public can contact the clerk's office to acquire documents in an alternate format. As well, a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. Members are reminded of the 5-minute time limit, which will be adhered to during this meeting. Members can submit another request to speak if they require more time to ask questions or make comments. And today's Public Works Committee meeting is being run as a hybrid meeting in anticipation of the time when you will have the option of attending committee meetings in person or virtually. Councillors won't see any changes to the process for now, and you'll still need to be signed into eScribe for access to the agenda for votes and to get onto the speakers list. For today, I'll ask for your patience during the voting process as there's a bit of a change in the way that the results are displayed, and we will keep that moving as smoothly as possible. We do have quorum present, and I notice that Councillor Wilson and Councillor Clark are also in attendance to committee today as well. First up is approval of the agenda. Elsie McIntosh, is there any changes to the agenda?
Madam Chair, the following changes were made to the agenda. 7, consent items. Item 7.3, Waste Management Advisory Committee minutes from December 16th, 2021. Item 12, notices of motion. There were 3 notices of motion added. 12.1, Main Street East and King Street East Delta in-service road safety review, Hamilton Ward 3. Item 12.2, Main Street West at Dundurn Street South and King Street West at Dundurn Street South intersection road safety plan, Hamilton Ward 1. And 12.3, replacement of deficient sidewalk curbs and driveway approaches, Ward 1.
Thank you. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the amendments to the agenda? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Powers. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, it's before you electronically.
Madam Chair, I'm waiting for Councillor Pearson to vote.
Sorry, Madam Chair, it's not coming up. I'm in
worries.
favor.
Okay.
I moved it. I'm in favor.
Madam Chair, that carries 8-0.
Thank you. Moving on to declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest, either disqualifying or otherwise? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, March 21st, 2022. May I please have a mover and seconder to put the minutes on the table? Moved by Councillor Powers, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, it's before you electronically to approve.
Yeah, can you do that? I got another phone right up. See what I got?
Councillor Ferguson, your microphone is live.
Counselor Pearson, are you, yes, your thumbs up?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, but Madam Clerk, do you have me in attendance? Because it's not coming up and I've never had this problem.
I do have you in attendance.
Okay, the votes are not coming up on my
Try
computer.
hitting F5.
I have. I'll keep
Okay,
an eye
Councillor
out.
Pearson, are you okay indicating visually for the
Yep.
remainder of the meeting? Thank you.
Madam Chair, that vote carries 8-0.
Great, thank you. Moving on to consent items. First up is 7.1, Ministry of Transportation Provincial Highways Projects Update, Report PW20063A. May I please have a mover and seconder to put consent item 7.1, I guess, to receive it. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. Any discussion on this report? Councillor Jackson?
Thanks, Chair Nan. If I could ask through you to Acting Director Mike Field. So this is about various provincial highway projects that are on the perimeter of our municipality. And in light of one of the reports coming up later in your agenda regarding the truck route subcommittee's recommendations and hopefully the adoption officially of a ring road, I don't see here on this report a request that has come from last term of council and reinforced by this term of council about correcting and expanding the pinch points at the 403 and Link and at the QEW and the Red Hill Valley Parkway. And just wondering if Acting Director Field has heard anything from the MTO and why it wasn't possibly included in this report, and are we still hoping to hear? Through you, Chair Nan, please.
Certainly. Director?
I'm Mike Field, the Acting Director of Transportation Operations and Maintenance. Through the chair to the councillor, I'm not aware of those plans with MTO. This report just deals with projects that they have had in the plans that they're looking to execute this year and into next year, just highlighting those projects as they will have some impact to the people who are traveling through the city and looking to or not looking to use those roadways during the MTO works.
So, Chair Dan, with committee's concurrence, can I? Oh, yes, sorry. I just see Manager Malloy.
Steve Malloy, Manager Transportation Planning, through the chair. Councillor, we are currently in the process of a feasibility study as directed by council to look at the expansion of the Red Hill and Link parkways. And as part of the outcomes of that feasibility study, we would be looking at the opportunities for future work to be done at those pinch points at either end of those facilities. And those would be works that would be coming forward in the future and in coordination with MTO. But at this point, it's not on MTO's work plan. It certainly would be on us to coordinate that work at such time when that feasibility study is complete.
Well, Manager Malloy, thank you. Acting Director Field, first of all, thank you for explaining your report today. But Manager Malloy, thank you for raising my comfort level that it's definitely on your staff's radar. And in light of what may or may not be decided later on with the truck route subcommittee report and ultimately by council, the ring road concept and the expansion and the correction and dealing with the congestion at those pinch points of 403 Link and Red Hill Valley Parkway QEW will take on even greater importance down the road. So, Manager, I'm satisfied you've still got it on your work plan to consult with the ministry down the road. Thank you very much, Chair Nan.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Ferguson, we can't hear you at this point.
That better? My light
Yes.
wasn't on to show me that I was muted, so I got confused. I apologize.
No
So
worries.
It's interesting that the the MTO has announced the widening of Highway 6 between 403 and Highway 6, or Upper James Street. And so now we're going to be pinched twice. There's going to be 4 lanes dumping onto the 403 from Highway 6. And then we got the 2 lanes from the Red Hill, or the link, dumping onto 403. Then we got the 3 lanes on 403. So they're pinching 7, 8 lanes into 2. And so I've been raising this and putting resolutions through for probably 5 years now. And the best thing we've got from the ministry on that location is they're starting the ministry of environmental assessment. But it's going to be way after the Highway 6 is done, which being widened from 2 to 4 lanes is going to create more chaos. So as long as our staff know that this is a very serious matter, not only for the mountain, but it's also for Ancaster, that it's impossible in the mornings to get on the 403 and head down the hill. No, I just thought I'd bring up, but they are proceeding with an environmental assessment of the widening from all the way from Highway 2 to Highway 6 North. So it's a major project because they got to come down the escarpment. Of course, there'll be some pretty big environmental issues with that. So thanks for allowing me to make those comments.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further speakers, it was already moved and seconded and before committee for receipt.
Madam Chair, the vote carries 8-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7.2, the 2020 Bridge Ontario Structure Inspection Manual Summary Reports, PW 22020. May I please have a mover and seconder to receive the report? Councillor Vanderbeek, thank you. And Councillor Danko, any discussion? Okay, Councillor Danko and then Councillor Clark. And Acting Director Engineer Services is available to answer questions on the report. So go ahead, Councillor Danko.
Thank you, Chair Nan. Just wondering if I could get a brief overview on this, perhaps?
Sure. Through you, Councillor, through you, Chair, to Councillor Danko. This report is regarding, it's an information report regarding the 2020 Bridge OSIM inspections, which is the Ontario Structure Inspection Manual Summary Reports. So as per the council policy for sharing the council reports, which identify an imminent risk to human health and safety, this being brought forward. The Ontario Regulation 10497 states that every bridge shall be kept in good repair, and also we are required to do inspections every 2 years. So currently the inspection program, we are doing half at a time. So half the inventory gets done every 2 years. And in addition to the regulation, the OSIM inspection also requires that we do some field inspections, not very involved, but field inspections on structures that are not owned by the city as well, to make sure that those bridges are in safe condition. In 2020, we utilized 2 consultants, Morrison Hershfield and Wood Environmental, to undertake these inspections. So from the Morrison Hershfield, these 2 reports are appended to the report itself. Morrison Hershfield report identified an imminent work that needed to be done on Upper Sherman Bridge over the link. And it was regarding a loose concrete that needed to be removed. It was undertaken in September of 2020, utilizing the Policy 10, which is the emergency procurement. Wood also identified 3 structures with 1 issues each, and those were also referred to the transportation operations and maintenance, and all the works that were imminent were completed by March of 2022.
Thank you. Councillor Danko?
Thank you. So am I understanding that this report would be half of the city structures and then there would be a separate report for the other half?
Yes, so this report is for the 2020 inspection where we did the half of the inventory. 2021 inspections were undertaken as well. The reports are being completed so that it will be reported. The other half will be reported later in 2022.
Thank you. So when I'm looking through the report, there's table 1 has the critical work, table 2 is regular maintenance, and then table 3 is the 1 to 5 and 6 to 10 year needs. Was there a cost estimate for all of the critical work in table 1?
The ones that are required to be done within less than a year, about $2 million are allocated or budgeted for those kind of works. So we work with transportation operations and maintenance to undertake those less than 1 year work. The other ones we will be handling that through our major rehabilitation strategies. So it will be an ongoing discussion regarding how we are going to prioritize and get those works done. Thank you.
Thank you. So the $2 million required to complete the critical work being half of the city structures, we have adequate budget to do all of that work immediately?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll have to look into that, whether the adequacy is sufficient or not. Not sure at this time. We'll look into that and report back. But 2 million per year is what we have budgeted so far.
Okay, thank you. I think that would be important to make sure that we have adequate budget to do all of the critical work that's covered there, and considering that that's only critical work for half of the city structures. And then a follow-up question, just from an asset management perspective, if I add up the 1 to 5 year needs, it adds up to, I think, around $9.3 million. And the 6 to 10 year needs about $5.8 million. So again, if that's half, presuming the other half is, double, we would need to budget $20 million around there in the next 5 years to address all 1 to 5 year needs. How much are we actually budgeting?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not 100% sure on the number. In regards to the bridge numbers that I've seen so far, roughly in the 10 million range is what we have been doing for major rehabilitation.
10 million annually?
Yes.
Okay. So as we work through with our asset management program, you mentioned that we would be further evaluating and prioritizing what works to need to be done, and I presume that part of that work would be matching that time frames to the specific budgets that are required. Am I right to presume that work is happening now?
Through Madam Chair, that's what we are planning to do. I will have to look into it more carefully and reply back on that. But my understanding is, yes, we look through the condition of the bridges, and that's how we plan the works ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor, for those great questions. And just to be clear, Acting Director Jacob, did you say that that information, which Councillor Danko began a line of questioning on, could be integrated into the next report that's coming? The one that you referenced as the other half of the inventory report coming in 2022?
Yes, Madam Chair. So the next report can be inclusive of the budget and how we are handling the projects.
Thank you. And just quickly to Elsie McIntosh, would you like that in form of a motion to staff direction, or is what we just heard from Acting Director enough?
I think that what you've heard from the acting director is good enough.
Great, thank you. Next on the speakers list is Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me the opportunity to ask a couple of questions. Can I ask staff the consultant's report, which is Appendix A in this document, is this the first time that this report has been presented to Council, the one that's dated June 2021?
Madam Chair, through you, Madam Chair, yes, Councillor, this is the first time it is being reported.
So item 289 in Appendix A indicates an issue with regards to the concrete over the link with the Upper Sherman Bridge. And there's an asterisk on page 10 of 38, which indicates that the city was advised September 18th of 2020 that there was loose concrete areas over the traffic lanes. Council passed a policy in January 2020 to be advised of any consultants' reports where there was imminent risk to public safety. I'm trying to understand why we weren't advised of this situation or this report.
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor, yes, it was reported to the city by an email or something like that. So from the consultant, their report was not completed by that time. So it was undertaken as per policy 10, which is the emergency works.
But council wasn't advised.
Madam Chair, I'm unable to speak about that as I started acting only recently.
Thank you, Acting Director. I see Acting General Manager Craig Murdoch is on the line. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I would just like to say that that was under a different director at the time, and that director is no longer with the city. So Susan is correcting that oversight by bringing it to you now.
Thank you. It's important to note that, Madam Chair, because I mean, two documents indicate that there was a risk here. And I understand from our staff that they did correct the risk by fixing the concrete under the Upper Sherman Bridge using their delegated authority. But it's important as we go forward that we know about these risks, because that's what that policy specifically was intended to correct. And I just wanted to bring that to both the committee's attention, but also staff's attention as we go forward. Thank you, Chair, for giving me the latitude today.
No worries. Thank you, Councillor, and thank you to staff for clarifying the corrections, both in terms of the works as well as the reporting accountability moving forward. Seeing no further speakers on the item, it has been duly moved and seconded and is before committee for receipt. Electronic vote, please. And that electronic vote is up.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, it's just loading very slowly on my screen.
No worries. And Councillor Pearson has indicated with hands up in favor.
The vote's still loading.
Still hanging.
It is.
Well, how about this? Does anybody oppose? If you could just indicate quickly visually if you oppose, otherwise we will take that as a carried. Okay. And appreciating Elsie McIntosh, the system still needs to catch up with us as we proceed.
Thank
so
you.
Are you comfortable with me declaring that that's cleared? None of my colleagues have objected.
Yes, of course.
Great. Okay, moving on to discussion items. Item 10.1 is addressing traffic speed and volume on Harbourfront Drive, PW 22017 for Ward 2. Again, Acting Director Mike Field of Transportation Operations and Maintenance is available
Madam Chairman, can I just go back to 7.3? I didn't hear you call that one. I must have missed it. I apologize. I just have a question on the consent item 7.3.
My apologies, Councillor. I skipped a page on my roadmap, it appears. Give me a quick second here. We do have the Waste Management Advisory Committee minutes from the December 16th meeting that was added to the agenda. Go
I
ahead.
just have a question on that.
Yep.
So
Go ahead.
these minutes were just uploaded, I guess, this morning, but I read through it on page 4. This is the design criteria for waste. And if Angela Story, I see she's on. I can see if I could just ask her a question.
Yep, she's here. Go ahead.
Hi, Angela. Angela, I saw this, and then I saw your email this morning, and I did cartwheels. I haven't done a cartwheel in a long time, but it looks like the developers of the big development with the 3 towers in Councillor Farr's ward on James Street South has agreed to the various chutes, the 3 chutes for the green bin, the waste, the waste, and the containers. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Ferguson, it's Angela Story, the Director of Waste Management. Yeah, so these minutes were from December 16th, so of course they're a little bit behind where we are today. So just looking at an update in advance of this afternoon's meeting, I did confirm that of the 3 big ones that we're working with down in Ward 2, and Councillor Farr's here as well, a big one that is going to have 1,000 residents and 3 towers at the corner of John Street and Wilson. They have redesigned their original waste plan, and they will be meeting our criteria, so we will be able to service them from a waste diversion perspective, as you've noted, and we're still in conversation with developers and planning staff with the other 2 buildings.
So this is not the 3 towers that are proposed at John Street South near the Medical Arts Center. It's a different one. It's on John Street North?
Yeah, it was John Street North and Wilson.
Okay. Have you been able to speak with that developer? He said at the public meeting he'd been prepared to do it for the John Street South development. Have you had conversations with them yet?
Yeah, so through the chair, we have had conversations with all 3 planning staff responsible for those files, and we're just working through the planning staff to get conversations with the development staff. So we have reached out to everyone. We have had initial conversations with everyone. We're just waiting to see if they can adjust their plans like the other tower did.
Well, if I was in person, I could give you a high five because that's great news. Did you say how many residents in the John Street North one? Is it?
Yeah, 3 towers on that site and 1,000 residents.
So that's 1,000 new homes that are now going to have proper recycling so that everything doesn't have to go to landfill.
Through the chair, that's correct.
We really need to celebrate that. So congratulations, Angela, on that. And publicly like to thank the developers for taking this on because it's important to preserve our landfill site. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Director. And I can't wait to see that cartwheel live and in person one day. Councillor Farr, go ahead.
Yes, you know what, I really appreciated Councillor Ferguson for some years now, really focused on this, and certainly we're there with the policy due to his, in part anyway, to his persistence and tenacity. And I don't think I've ever brought forward, but I've always been meaning to, so I'll do it now. The fact that, you know, the 5-phase transformational Royal Connaught development has 2 phases complete, and the first one was an adaptive reuse, and they actually incorporated that years ago. So they have the 3 chutes and the 3 more towers to come. One is in the planning stages now, so the 3rd of the 5 will also accommodate this. So hats off to Spalacci and Valeri and all of the residents there that have also eagerly participated in this program. And I don't know if it's the first with the 3 chutes in the core, but certainly it's appreciated and deserves mention. Some are very much in the infancy of planning outside of the Royal Connaught, while they were ahead of the game some years ago when they had site plan approval, I think close to a decade ago now, and this was included in that. So thought I'd mention that. Thank you very much. I'm supportive of what's here.
Thank you, councillors, and absolutely the standard moving forward for the city. And our multi-res development, for sure. So Elsie McIntosh, I think, is our eScribe back up? Are we able to use the voting system?
It's back up on my screen, so if I missed the word seconders, let's test it and cross our fingers.
There we go. Okay, so just bear with us as it comes up on eScribe, colleagues.
Mover and seconder, please, Madam Chair.
My apologies. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Pearson.
It's cycling, but it's opening the vote.
There we go. I've received it. Hope my colleagues have as well. Councillor Pearson is indicating visually in support, and Councillor Powers as well.
Just waiting. Oh, there she goes. And it worked. The vote carried.
Excellent.
8-0.
All right, so back to 10.1. My apologies for skipping that one over. Addressing traffic speed and volume on Harbourfront Drive, Ward 2. Again, Acting Director Mike Field is available to introduce the report, and then we'll get our mover and seconder. Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Chair. This is a follow-up report from a motion that Ward 2 Councillor Farr passed, asking for roadway safety improvements on Harbourfront Drive. That is the road that leads from Bay Street down into Bayfront Park. And we conducted an analysis of the use of that roadway and came to a conclusion that it would benefit from having a number of new safety enhancements to tame speed and also make it a friendlier place for pedestrians and cyclists. So within the report, we're recommending one speed cushion up on Harbourfront Drive, up towards the Bay Street end. And then a yellow center line down the entire length of Harbourfront Drive, cyclist wayfinding signage, and that signage to remind drivers and others that it is a shared use road and to share the road accordingly. And we would look to complete those in 2022 if this is approved today through the Councillors Ward 2 Area Rating Reserve. And then next year, we are looking at installing a Type D pedestrian crossover towards the bottom of Harbourfront Drive, where it intersects with the roadway that leads to all of the yacht clubs, and then also integrated with that pedestrian crossover of having a raised crosswalk to further enhance the accommodations for pedestrians and further slow drivers down on that section of roadway to enhance the walkability and the accessibility of that area. And then the last one is removing it from the OBL. So that's kind of just a quick breakdown of the recommendations in this report and a little bit of background on how we came to those.
Thank you. Much needed improvements and excellence towards pedestrian safety. Moved by Councillor Farr, seconded by Councillor Jackson, and Councillor Farr is on the speakers list. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I want to thank Mike and his staff. Mike's been doing some great work since he grabbed the helm here. And this project is the direct result of some neighborhood input, like a lot of localized traffic initiatives that all of us on this committee and those of us who join this committee make requests of and get ratification for almost always, in fact, if not always. So I just wanted to thank him because it's great working with his staff. They're passionate people. They're very smart people, and in this case they were able to discern exactly what the issues are by their usual site visits and sort of modify what was requested. Ultimately, as you know, Madam Chair, we are investing. I'd say we're at about $160 million on the waterfront. This area is not exclusive of that investment, despite Pier 8, Pier 5, 6, 7 getting a lot of attention. And this citizen-led input actually does, as you noted, go hand in hand with the importance for public safety, but it's hardly something that's going to come as an advantage to local residents. As we all know, the reason why we've made such a significant investment and continue to on the water's edge over the years to fulfill our mandate of bringing people there is for everyone. And so everyone will have an advantage here. Bit of a sneaky climb and a entrance to that area of the Bayfront, and certainly one that increasingly over the years, even during the pandemic, as people tried to get out, sees sort of an increase in folks from all over, even from outside our city visiting. So I really appreciate Mike's work. Thank you for the update and appreciate support of some $40K in area rating capital reserve funds from Ward 2 to accomplish this. Thank you.
Thank you. No further speakers. So it is before committee for approval.
Madam Chair, that carries 8-0.
Great. Moving on to item 10.2, red light camera program, new sites for 2022. PW Report 220118 citywide. Again, Acting Director Mike Field, please introduce the report, and then we'll move to our mover and seconder. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The report that's in front of you today is asking for the approval of 10 new red light camera locations that are spread out across the city. Since 2007, we've been adding about 5 locations every year, and in the years of 2020 and 2021, we did not install any locations, as partly due to the complications of COVID. So this is a catch up on those past 2 years. That's why there's 10 locations captured here. I'm sure everyone's aware that City of Hamilton has been using red light cameras since around 2000, one of the first municipalities to use them, and they've been very successful in the city. They reduce injury and fatal type collisions by around 65%, which is considerable. Red light cameras, of course, address right angle style of collisions, which are can be the most I guess the dangerous types of collisions for motorists. So the selection of locations is data driven. It is based on collision analysis that shows right angle collisions being a problem, and thus the selection of the red light cameras at intersections that would best benefit from receiving a red light camera at them. So again, this is a suggestion of 10 locations as a catch up of 1 year or 2 years where we did not install red light cameras. That's a quick synopsis of this report.
Great. Thank you for the overview. Just quickly, mover and seconder before we can get to the speakers list. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Powers, and Councillor Pearson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for that quick overview. So I too want to thank you reading the report. There's 2 locations being proposed in Stony Creek. I believe you have highway number 8 and Grays Road eastbound, and you have Barton and Fruitland eastbound. So I'm really appreciative of that. So I just want to ask, are these the cameras that move around? So we're taking them from somewhere else?
Through the chair to the councillor, no, these are permanent locations. These are red light camera locations. They stay at this location permanently. I think the ones that move around are automated speed enforcement cameras. Okay. Those are the ones that cycle. These ones will be there forever and a day until we decide to remove them.
Thank you. I have one at highway number 8 and Green Road westbound, and it's worked very, very well. And I only know because of the residents that have called me and gotten tickets for running them. But thank you for that. And I'm really thrilled. Both of these locations are very heavily traveled, and with the development east of Fruitland Road, it's always a concern. So thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Next up is Councillor Jackson.
To think, Chair Nan, 22 years ago, we started with 2 roaming cameras that we actually shared with 5 other municipalities as part of a pilot project, Halton, Peel, I think Kitchener-Waterloo, and a couple of others along with the City of Hamilton. Anyways, great to see this program continuing, all in the name of enhanced public safety and an extra tool, helping also police officers that can't be 24/7 at every important intersection. Through you to Acting Director Field, Mike, I'm very supportive of your recommendations. Of course, it's benefiting a number of locations in other wards. I look at your Appendix B, Mike, and I see about 24 locations, but I gotta believe the last time I counted, it was in the range of maybe 30 to 40. Can you correct that, Acting Director, please? Through you, Chair Nan.
Through the chair to the councillor, we just this morning updated the Appendix B to include all of the locations. There's 32 in the city. So I believe the one that is at the online agenda is the revised version showing all locations. So you're correct. There was a mistake in that appendix, which has since been updated to include all 32 locations.
Fantastic. And the three that I have had for a number of years, acting director, all along Upper Gauge, and ironically, Chair Nan, because Upper Gauge is an exit ramp off of the link, the last one eastbound before Dartnall, Mohawk Upper Gauge, Fennel Upper Gauge, and the original Appendix B did not have Stone Church Upper Gauge. That one is now on the revised, acting director?
Through the chair to the councillor, yes, correct. It is on there now.
And last question, Chair Nan. I know, Mike, I've given you community-driven other locations like Upper Gauge Royal Vista, Mountain Brow, Upper Ottawa. Are they still on a to-do list or a watching the warrants list type of thing still down the road? And maybe if you could just send me whatever's outstanding in my ward, I can continue to work with you and your staff. That's my last question, Chair Nan, please.
Through the chair to the councillor, we do have a large assessment list, which we use to select the locations from year to year. Includes every signalized intersection across the city, including those in your ward. I can provide you with the ranking, the existing rankings of the intersections with your ward if you'd like, and that's to say in the future that as we expand the red light camera locations, that other candidate locations in your ward and other wards would kind of make their way to the top of the list.
And the reason why, Chair Nan, to conclude, acting director, it may just seem something that, you know, it's automatic. You've got it within your department. I know that my community, especially when it was community driven by way of petitions, requests, whatever, I know that they'll be asking me, Tom, I don't see it on the list of today's report. And I just want the confidence of saying, no, staff have a larger comprehensive composite list that they constantly are reviewing. Thank you, Chair Nan.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Oh, Councillor Farr.
Through you, thank you, Chair. To Mike, you know, when I look at Appendix B and the lists and the total violations, there's some real standouts. And I'm assuming that in a lot of cases, or in some cases through all of these violations, folks fight the ticket. I don't think very many at all are successful because a picture says 1,000 words. But is there a theme, particularly on the ones where we're getting into like 4,000 plus in some of those intersections? So there's continues to be an issue. What are they arguing when they are, or do we even look at that? I'm wondering about you know, if there's a consistency or a pattern we're looking at as to why, despite the camera, in some cases many years, these violations continue to grow. I hope you understand the question. Through you, Chair.
Through the chair to the councillor, I don't have that information as far as how those challenges occur within the provincial court system. We don't, as a city, get involved in those occasions. The activity at a certain location, you'll have to look at it with some context in mind. Obviously, some of those top offending locations have a lot of traffic volume. So obviously, with volume, there's more opportunity for people to run the red light and get caught. But as part of the roadway safety program, we're always looking at these types of statistics in our collision analysis to look for other enhancements that we can to make sure that the intersections are as safe as they can be. And one of the things that we're looking at is the effectiveness of red light cameras. But across the city, though, I think it's a really impressive statistics that when we have a red light camera operating at an intersection, that those type of collisions that do result in injuries and fatalities are reduced by a considerable amount. Of I believe it's 68%, and that's a lot to be said. I know there's some concerns within the public or remarks about it being a cash grab, that sort of thing, but I think that statistics on its own really speaks to itself, that those opportunities prior to the red light camera being there, that means 68% more injury and fatal type collisions were occurring. This is a very effective mitigating tool for making those intersections safer.
Oh yeah, I agree completely. And as you say, it's the best argument for anyone who may still, although I would suggest in the last 20 years that cash grab argument has been greatly mitigated due to the success that you're just saying. I am curious. A lot of times in our very busy intersections where we're seeing, I guess, some large numbers. Many of them are over a number of years too, which makes the total violation number larger. But they're consistent drivers. I mean, they drive it all the time, so it's people know when there's a red light camera if they're on that route all the time. And I've often been curious about it, but I appreciate the answer and certainly am very supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further speakers, it is moved and seconded and before committee for approval.
Madam Chair, the vote carries 8-0.
Excellent. Moving on to item 10.3, the Truck Route Subcommittee Report 22-001, March 28, 2022. Brian Hollingworth, Director of Transportation Planning and Parking, and Steve Malloy, Manager of Transportation Planning, are available to answer any questions regarding this report. If I could please have a mover and seconder to approve the recommendations in the report, moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. And questions, first up is Councillor Ferguson. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So just so I'm clear, is Brian the one that's going to ask the questions to on this issue?
Go ahead and ask your question, and then between the director and the manager, they'll tag team the responses. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, what you're looking for is really a receipt of the subcommittee report, and then we're going out to public consultation after that. Have I got that correct?
Through the chair, not quite. There was extensive Brian Hollingworth, Director of Transportation Planning and Parking. There was extensive consultation done as part of the Truck Route Master Plan over the last 2 years. You'll recall back in November, we were directed to go back and revisit the recommendations. We have done that, and it was presented last week to the Truck Route Subcommittee. The only final step would be to file the Truck Route Master Plan under the EA process. It was done as a Class EA process for master plans.
Okay, because I was reading here, we would refer to the clerk for a 30-day. I'm just trying to find the part here.
Yes, through the chair. That 30-day review process is a standard formality as part of any class environmental assessment.
So this will not go to council for ratification then until that 30-day assessment is done?
Through the chair, the way we've written it, I believe, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, it goes to council, and there's no need for it to go back after that 30-day review period.
Okay, so just a couple more questions in light of those answers. First of all, I understand from one of the subcommittee members that the agricultural industry will be exempt from these. Is that true?
Steve, do you want to take that one? Through the chair, there is no exemption for any industry regarding the adherence to the truck routes. However, there would be, if there's an agricultural use that requires the use of a truck route, the shortest path from that designated truck route would still be permitted to access that business. So there's no exemption specifically set out for any business in the Truck Route Master Plan.
So if a farmer is harvesting soybeans, wheat, or corn in a field and they need to go out on a non-truck route, they won't be ticketed for that out of their field.
So through the chair, that is, if it's the shortest route from their business of operation to the nearest truck route, they would be permitted to do so.
Okay. And so, Sunny Ridge Road is one that I've contacted. I don't know whether it was you, Steve, or his name just escapes me, so I'm hesitating a bit, who was driving the Truck Route Master Plan. But Sunny Ridge Road has an S-turn and the farming community, because there's a lot of farmers in the Jerseyville area, wanted to use Jerseyville Road to get to 52 to get on the 403, because they pull these S-trains trailers, and that S-turn on Sunny Ridge Road is almost impossible for them to navigate. It's a hard left and a hard right. What exemption do farmers have for that? If they physically can't get these trains, it's really a rural road, but they can't get these trains. It's designated as the truck route from the maps I saw. But if they want to avoid that S-turn, can they go straight down Jerseyville Road, or is that illegal?
So through the chair, we are lucky to have Omar Shams, who knows all the details, the specific
That's the
route.
person I was trying to think of.
Yeah, and Omar is on the line here, luckily enough for me, and to answer your question, Councillor. So I will hand that over to him.
Yes, and Omar, I think I asked you this question or put it through to you when I had. I guess it's okay to say the company Miller Farms has their big drying facility and storage facility on Jerseyville Road, and they haul down to the port using trains, the dried grain or corn, etc. Will they still be able to use Jerseyville Road through to 52 to avoid that S-turn on Sunny Ridge?
Good afternoon, Omar Shams, Project Manager, Transportation Planning. Through the chair, Councillor, in terms of farming, so there are two different types of vehicles. One is the farming machineries and equipments that they are exempted as part to follow the truck route system. And there is trucks that are delivering grains and products to and from the farms to the milling facilities or any other hubs. These types of trucks are required to follow the truck route system. So specific to the Jerseyville, we looked into the potential for having Jerseyville between Sunny Ridge and Highway 52 part of the truck route system and designated as a full-time truck route. Based on the site review and review of the condition of the roadway, the road profile is undulating, and there are a number of heading driveways along that segment of the corridor, which has potential for safety concerns that our study consultant has raised. We do provide some degree of redundancy in the system in cases of any constraints in the geometry of roadway. Any truck traffic from Jerseyville has the option of going through the Linden Road into Governor's Road or Highway 5 and 6. And if they're coming towards Highway 403, then they have to come in through Sunny Ridge Road. So these are redundancies provided, making sure that these kind of circumstances are avoided. The farming industry located between on Jerseyville between Sunny Ridge and Highway 52, they still can follow the shortest path to reach any of these to truck route system.
So in your consultant's professional opinion, who are traffic experts, do they think that the trains that farmers use, is the two trailers hooked together, can maneuver that S-turn on Sunny Ridge safely?
Through the chair, that is a detailed design level, and by providing better shoulders on the roadway, that's something we can look into and recommend some improvements. Given the constraints of the road specific at that S-turn, that is something we can look in and provide that detail and report and connect with yourself and provide you more detail specific to that curve.
Because I'd appreciate that. They're a big operator, and there's other operators that are similar in size in that area. And, you know, I don't drive a truck. I do, but not the big trains and not the tractor trailers. But it looks like it'd be difficult to make that hard left turn and immediate hard right turn. And that's why there were safety concerns. So if you could get back to me on that, I appreciate it. And I have one more question, Madam Chairman, before you cut me off, because my time's up. I just, I got an email this morning from the Hamilton Port Authority, and they've been, according to their email, being lobbying the truck route subcommittee to make sure they maintain one westbound access to get out to the 403 to go west. You know, or the empty trucks coming back from the port, they come in from the west, they unload at the port, then they go back out to head back out to the Brantford, you know, London area. I take it from looking at the maps, they have not been accommodated for that. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that alternative was included as part of the assessment, but that was not the recommended route map that was approved by the subcommittee.
Okay, so staff recommended it, but the committee overturned it.
No, so through the chair, to correct, it was one of many alternatives. There are 6 alternatives.
Oh, okay.
That was not selected as the preferred alternative recommended by staff. The recommendation by staff was approved by the subcommittee, which did not include a westbound route.
Okay, but they can with 5 axles, can't they? From what I read. Was I think the red line or the green line showed a truck route for maximum 5 axles?
It was four axles through the chairs, 4 axles. The 5 axles would be required to go out Burlington Street and then either take the QEW or the Red Hill and Link.
Hey, Councillor, that does bring you to time. If you want to come on for a second time, that's
Yeah, well, I just want to follow up on that. The port is a very big part of our city operation. I understand not bringing trucks down through down Main Street, but I don't know how we can accommodate them to. They seem pretty adamant. So yeah, put me back on for
Thank
another.
you, Councillor. Moving on to Councillor Farr, then Councillor Powers, and if there's no other first-time speakers, I'll be adding myself to the list. Oh, Councillor Jackson, then myself, and then for a second time, Councillor Ferguson. So go ahead, Councillor Farr.
Yeah, that last question or the pondering of our first speaker was hours and hours and months and years in the making. How do we accommodate them? And really, as chair of the truck route subcommittee, having worked with my colleagues on the subcommittee, the public and staff quite a bit leading up to things. It really comes down to that. I mean, and certainly we had 14 delegations in our final, what could very well be our final truck route master plan subcommittee. And I'd say some half of the delegates were from that very industry, most AGRA. And that certainly wasn't the first time we heard from them. I had my own meetings with them and the Port Authority and everyone else. And ultimately what we had come up with, as you know, with your good work on the committee as Vice and the rest of the folks, the concept of a ring road with a positive guidance was what we came up with. And certainly I think we concluded with the comment that we appreciated all the people who offered their input, Madam Chair, particularly those elected officials from way back when who suffered the slings and arrows of fighting the good fight for those ring roads. And they are the Red Hill Valley Parkway and the Lincoln Alexandria Expressway, of course. Certainly a big part of putting those expressways and parkways in play decades ago when the conversations started was to get trucks off of our inner city streets and our city streets and suburban streets. And a lot of truck route planning has been sort of ad hoc on this committee, even before my time as councillor. That's no longer the case after that considerable amount of work, and to go full circle on what I had opened with. Option 5 was, I believe, unanimously approved by the subcommittee, and it's here today and ultimately to be ratified next week at council. Tremendous effort by Steve, Brian, but Omar, I just want to say it's very impressive. I think you were new to a lot of us only a few years ago. This is probably one of the most challenging files for any staffer in my time, at least on council, and maybe ever. A lot of balls in the air, a lot of engagement that you needed to carry out with varying opinions. The spectrum was broad, and you really did a tremendous job. And you were very good at bringing clarity to what was a complicated, long-standing file. So I just wanted to hear in Public Works recognize that. I expect there'll be a few more questions, and certainly I hope as chair I summed it up nicely. It's a ring road now, folks. Should we ratify this at council with the positive guidance concept? And the one point I tried to make through it all, whether it was in the meetings with residents over years ago, whether it was meetings more recently with those pretty much 4 industries, I would suggest, from the AGRA field that I tried to make strongly was when you consider where we sort of delineate where it's very convenient. The ring road's convenient even if you have an industry on Wellington, but where you delineate where you wouldn't choose any cut through anywhere in the city if you were on Sherman North at Burlington Street. So in a lot of my arguments over the years, and this wasn't only one, this wasn't the only argument, and certainly I heard a lot of good counter arguments from some great people who continue to invest in industry between Wellington and Sherman. But the distance is a couple of kilometers. To get to that point of our ring road system where you wouldn't choose otherwise. And so I will endeavor going forward, should this be ratified at council, to make it as more appealing, let's say, for those larger 5-axle or greater deliveries, whether they're coming and going to those 4 or 5 industries down at the port between Wellington and Sherman, as convenient as possible, understanding that they are adding a few more kilometers on each trip. But the reality is, after a whole lot of work over many, many years, where we've landed, I think, is where we're headed as a city for many, many more years to come. So thanks again to everybody who engaged, in a special recognition to you, Omar, for your tremendous efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up is Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair Nan, and I'll just quickly dovetail on where Councillor Farr left off. I want to thank the overall staffing leadership with Director Brian Hollingworth and with Manager Steve Malloy, but a special applause and thanks to Project Manager Omar Shams. I can tell you the project manager was always available and accessible to my Eastmount community. He shared information along the way. Every part of this complex, this has to be one of the most complex issues I've even been part of and dealing with through a subcommittee that the city, past and current, has ever had to deal with. Just given the complexities across the entire city of trying to accommodate all the needs and above all providing the most safest access possible for neighborhoods and our citizens as paramount. Omar has done an extraordinary job, and his talents and skills and his and the personable way that he was dealing with at least constituents in my area is to be said with great gratitude to Project Manager Shams. Chair Nan, if this is adopted today, the ring road concept that took shape in 1997 with the opening of the Lincoln Alexander Parkway, in 2007 with the building and opening of the Red Hill Valley Parkway. The adoption of the ring road concept is only possible because those 2 major transportation corridors were built by the former region and the new city of Hamilton. So I'm very pleased to think that 70,000 vehicles a day use those 2 arterial roads. So think about it. Remove those 2 transportation corridors and you've got 70,000 vehicles and many, many, many trucks, 18-wheelers, etc., that would be back on the Mohawks, Lime Ridge, Stone Churches, Fennels of the mountain community, let alone other parts of our city. So huge benefit to that. Policing, obviously the Hamilton Police Service are going to be asked to do even more in terms of enforcement, and hoping, and I know they'll be at the table and they'll be out there more visibly to do the proper enforcement. I'm not convinced, and I was not overwhelmed, Chair Nan, by the response from some representatives of the Trucking Association in terms of how best they communicate to the industry and how they even police, if you will, pardon the pun, their own companies and truck drivers that come into Hamilton, to be much aware of and to be responsible for roads that now will be banned for the heavy trucks. But anyways, that'll be a work in progress with the Trucking Association to ensure vital communication is forthcoming. Anyways, Chair Nan, this is a major shift now today. If we approve this, this is a major shift in how trucks will operate across our community, and especially in the lower city, where I know I've heard from many of my colleagues, past and current, the angst and the serious safety concerns they've brought to the table. This is a major shift today, and I'm hopeful that it will have all parties at the table support. Thanks, Chair Nan.
Thank you, Councillor. And up next is myself, so I need to relinquish the chair to Vice Chair Powers.
Thank you. Proceed, Councillor.
Thank you. Through you, I also want to thank staff who brought back the iteration that was unanimously supported by subcommittee, and for integrating the vision statement and the motto and Vision Zero and the necessary hierarchy of road design and use to center a child in our communities and in our city. I also want to acknowledge and thank all the residents and organizations who spoke on behalf of the neighbors who live in the lower city who've had to contend with industrial truck traffic for decades, cutting through their neighborhoods, making those roadways unsafe for pedestrians, making it very scary for children on their way to school, on the way to the parks, and also the concern many residents had regarding their health and the undue impact to their health disproportionately by the proximity of where they live and where trucks move in our city. So again, thank you to staff for centering people in this report and this route, and also for accommodating the needs of goods movement, as we know the need to balance both social, environmental, and economic development in our municipality is the three pillars that we have to hold in unison in order to get the best strategies forward as a municipality. So really, really appreciating it. Also echoing previous councillors' comments about this is a new direction for us, pardon the pun, and a much welcome one in the community. I think I was most looking forward to moving forward from this decision point onwards, should council ratify it, is also the evaluative framework moving forward to help inform any revisions to the truck route that is based in, continue to be based in evidence and data versus lobbying by the interests of those who garner profit in our municipality as a result of the route or as a result of their businesses and being set up here in this city that welcomes them. So yep, just wanted to add my comments there and say thank you so much, and acknowledging that having those ring roads in place and putting them in use in this way is absolutely what is helping deliver better health for residents in the lower city. So thank you again. I'll take back the chair, and next up is Councillor Pearson, then Councillor Powers, and then for a second time, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to echo all the previous commenters. This has been a very, very long process. I've been on Truck Route Subcommittee since its initiation, and I'm thrilled that we've landed in this location today. I too want to thank staff, not just for all of these sites. I mean, it's trying to make sure that we have a healthy balance, recognizing our much needed industry and the health and safety of our residents. So I truly appreciate staff looking at Ward 10. You may not think there's a lot of truck traffic because we have sort of a ring road, but I do have an area north side of the QEW that is all residential that's impacted by numerous transport trucks that use this as a bypass, especially when the QEW gets shut down. So I know that'll still happen, but at least trucks have been removed as far as signage that would be going up from Grays Road east to the city limits. So I appreciate what staff did, and I know the residents will also. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Councillor Powers.
Thank you. I won't repeat the compliments, long overdue, and I commend the committee for their deliberations over the years getting to this particular point. I just have one question is, in your deliberations or the presentation from staff, has it been discussed how this is going to be rolled out, not only to the operators who will use these routes, but also to the public for their information? Have we got anywhere near that point, or is this going to come as a result after council makes the decision when they do make the decision?
Thank you, Councillor. Over to staff.
Whoever.
I'll start out and then Stephen Omar can chime in. Just that is a very good question. It won't be immediate. It's not like you turn on a switch. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of signage, mapping. We've got a recommendation. We've got to update all the bylaws. So we wanted to get the network approved, then all that work will start. A lot of it will fall on the shoulders of transportation and operations and maintenance, Mike Field, and we have been working with them very closely. Once, if this is approved, that their staff are ready to start undertaking that detailed work. And Stephen Omar can elaborate on anything I missed. So through the chair, and I always invite Omar to add some things. This is a beginning, not an ending, because we need to operationalize this. So as part of the communication strategy, and I think Councillor Jackson really identified this as part of the subcommittee discussion, is how we communicate to the industry, how do we get the word out, and how do we kind of self-enforce through that. So all these things need to work together in terms of enforcement, communication, engineering. It's going to be a process, and we have a vision to get there. We have a roadmap. So nothing specific in details of how we're going to do it, but those are things that we're going to report back on through implementation of this truck route plan. Thank you.
So just my final remarks, it is, if indeed council supports this direction next week, then it's probably not a bad idea to start dropping all kinds of hints and breadcrumbs and all those things until we ultimately get to the point where it's official and has become operational. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you. And when I hear everybody speak about the ring road, what immediately comes to my mind is the ring road that got canceled, which was the extension of Burlington Street through to 403, long before I was on council. I'm not even sure Councillor Jackson was on council back then. But that was a big debate, just as was the Red Hill and the link. It was to get that ring road extended from the industrial area through to individuals that want to go west on 403. And then ultimately got canceled. And it's a tough call for me. I mean, we got the largest port on the north side of the Great Lakes. And there's been a lot of significant investment down there. And like Bungie's probably going to be the most impacted because they're right down at the west end of the Burlington Street area, where they have to circle back on. I think it's more than a few kilometers from Sherman over, but they are a food processor and bring a lot of these big trucks in full of agricultural products to be able to process them. And and on the flip side of that, it's public safety, and safety should always be first. You see those big, particularly those trains trying to make right-hand turns on a Cannon or left-hand turns on a Queen or right-hand turns on a King. And it's difficult for a driver with his mirrors to pick up both trains and where kids may be trying to cross the road or that sort of thing. So I'm really divided on this one, but I did talk to Ron Foxcroft this morning, who is a well-known Hamilton citizen and a major trucker with Luke Transport, and he always likes to be on time. At least he brags about that. But he concurred also that public safety should rule the day on which way to go. So I will support the recommendation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And that exhausts the speakers list, and it has been duly moved and seconded, and it's before committee for approval. Hopefully a continuation of trend. Oh, my apologies. Councillor Jackson, second time. And then Councillor Farr, also second time on the truck routes. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Jackson.
My microphone was flaming red, Chair Nan, just to let you know. Thank you. Flaming red, yes, thank you. Listen, I'm sorry to go on a second time. There's an important point that I didn't want lost. I did have trepidation when the Truck Route Subcommittee began its work that there may end up being sacrifices down the road to accommodate new requests where we are now putting in a revised truck route master plan and routes that will be banned from heavy trucks. I truly, Chair Nan, had some trepidation that staff may have come back with, well, to accommodate this area of the city newly, Councillor Jackson will have to give up what your community 12 years ago had rightfully fought for with regard specifically to the banning of heavy trucks on the Kenilworth access. I just want to make a specific note of the fact that did not occur at all. I was so relieved about that, and staff went out of their way to say, if we're going to do anything, we will add on top of what communities like my East Mountain citizens had fought for many years ago. Thank you for allowing me to make that statement, Chair Nan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Moving on to second time. Councillor Farr.
Yeah, I think I'll give celebrated superhero staffer Omar the final word, and he can fill in the blanks because I maybe didn't stress it enough. It's actually 2.1 kilometers from Wellington to Sherman, and of course another 2.1 from Sherman to Wellington, so 4.2 kilometers in total. Regardless of that, I mentioned some of those, the key engagers from the industries, mostly Agra, really do deserve a lot of credit. They were very professional in their approach. They some great characters representing some growing companies who employ hundreds and hundreds of people. They were appealing to us. They really was. There was no real option for them because the axles didn't fit anyway. I mean, they really have much larger trucks, 6+ axles, and were initially appealing that we would ramp up the axles from the original request before the committee sent this back and said, come back with what a ring road looks like and the options you have. But let's recognize them, Omar. They are Bungie. They are, of course, Parrish and Heimbecker. There's Silvite with, I think they have 400 employees. These are Agra Industries, primarily, not all Agra, but between Wellington and Sherman, who really did participate and had a lot to say and did have legitimate concerns given the history and what they're used to in terms of their routes. They were represented well by HOPA, the Hamilton Oshawa Port Authority. There was a little bit of input late from, I believe, ArcelorMittal and Lafarge. I didn't want to mention them by name earlier, Madam Chair, because I know I'm probably missing a few, but that's where our superhero staffer, Omar, can help me in identifying and actually thanking those in the industry for their participation. So who am I missing, Omar? And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Through the chair, Councillor, you covered all of the companies who actively participated and provided feedback. There were some companies who were not directly impacted, but they also participated in the process, making sure that they expressed the interests of their drivers, for-hire drivers, but also the businesses that they're delivering goods to. But you covered all the key stakeholders there. Thank you.
Thank you. And like staff said during the subcommittee, can't drive around or walk around the neighborhoods now without counting axles. I've been doing it ever since subcommittee meeting. All right, moving on. It's been duly moved and seconded, and for committee, hopefully for a second unanimous vote before it goes to council. No pressure. In positive in favor is Councillor Pearson and Councillor Powers.
And Councillor Pauls, were you?
And Councillor Powers also with a thumbs up. Wonderful.
Madam Chair, that carries 9-0.
Thank you. Excellent. Moving on to motions, we've got 11.1 is the installation of speed cushions as a traffic calming measure on Princeton Drive for Ward 6. Councillor Jackson, could you please introduce your motion?
Chair Nan, I will. Moved by myself, seconded by Ward 7 Councillor Esther Pauls. The installation of speed cushions as a traffic calming measure on Princeton Drive. Whereas residents are requesting the installation of speed cushions on Princeton Drive in Ward 6 to address roadway safety concerns as a result of speeding and cut-through traffic. And whereas a petition of 25 names was submitted by residents, led by Mr. Barry Guy, a resident of Princeton, requesting the installation of speed cushions as a traffic calming measure. Therefore, be it resolved A, that the Transportation Operations Maintenance Section staff be authorized and directed to install 3 speed cushions as a traffic calming measure on Princeton as part of this year's spring application as follows. Roman numeral 1 between Sherwood Rise and Margate, Roman numeral 2 between Margate and Valecrest, Roman numeral 3 between Valecrest and Donley. B, that all costs associated with the installation of the traffic calming measures at these locations be funded from the project identification number listed to be completed under contract listed at an upset limit including contingency not to exceed $21,000. And C, the mayor and city clerk be authorized, directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents satisfactory in conditions and forms to the city solicitor. And I just want to mention, Chair Nan, again, community grassroots driven. And the sections here where the 3 speed cushions with hopeful committee support today will be installed are also in front of large open areas of green space, in front of the now saved Sherwood Secondary School, and in front of La Jeunesse de Pavilion French Public School as well. So lots of good reasons for the safety of students and kids kids and families in the neighborhood to have these speed cushions installed. Seconded by Councillor Pauls. Oh, and with thanks to Elsie McIntosh from Clerks, Acting Superintendent Joseph Kafadar for his assistance, and technologist Jamal Durrani as well. They met me on site to assist me. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And no further speakers. It's been moved and seconded for committee's approval.
Madam Chair, I'm just waiting for the vote to catch up to me. Oh, Councillor Ferguson. He has stepped away. Madam Chair, the vote carries 8-0.
Excellent, thank you. Now we're moving on to item 12, which is notices of motion. I will relinquish the chair to Vice Chair's powers in order to introduce my motion.
Over to you, Councillor, for your introduction of your notice of motion.
Thank you so much. 12.1 is Main Street East and King Street East Delta in-service road safety review in Ward 3. I will be seeking to waive the rules through you, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Jackson, and seeking to waive the rules as there's urgency to get this work going in light of the tragic loss of life and the critical impact to safety and well-being presented to pedestrians at this intersection.
Thank you, Councillor. We have a motion properly moved and seconded to waive the rules. Could we have a vote, please, on waiving the rules?
Mr. Chair, that vote carries 8-0.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nan, would you introduce your motion, please?
Thank you. Through you, whereas the City of Hamilton Vision Zero Action Plan 2019 through to 2025 identifies that no loss of life is acceptable and that traffic fatalities and injuries are preventable. Whereas ensuring the safety of vulnerable road users is a priority, and whereas on March 19th, 2022, 4 people lost their lives, including 3 pedestrians in a motor vehicle collision on King Street East near the Delta intersection. And whereas Ward 3 residents have expressed safety concerns as pedestrians for this intersection, and whereas the Transportation Operations and Maintenance Division is facilitating an in-service road safety review of the Main Street East and King Street East Delta intersection to identify possible safety enhancements. Therefore, be it resolved, A, that upon the conclusion of the Main Street East and King Street East in-service road safety review, that Transportation Operations and Maintenance Division report back to Public Works Committee with the review's findings inclusive of costs and proposed implementation plan, and B, that the Main Street East and King Street East in-service road safety review findings be shared with the city's LRT office for consideration and to identify if any of the proposed safety enhancements could be incorporated into a redesign of the intersection. It's moved by myself and with thanks to my seconder, Councillor Jackson. And if I could,
speaking to it, Councillor?
Yeah, just quickly through you, for all my colleagues, I'm sure you've seen the news, very tragic loss of life in a horrific crash on March 19th. 3 pedestrians passed away and another pedestrian injured as a result of the horrific crash. One of the workers killed is described by colleagues as a kind man, a dedicated worker. And I understand that he was intended to travel to the Philippines this month for his son's wedding. According to Hamilton Police Services, the investigation into the deaths is now a coroner's case, and the Collision Reconstruction Unit is assisting the coroner's office and continues to probe the cause of the crash. And if I could, through you to staff, if Acting Director Field could comment on what an in-service review is, and in these kinds of scenarios of this caliber of crash, what is the role of city transportation operation maintenance when a crash like this occurs? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you to Mr. Field.
Through the chair to the councillor. In-service roadway safety review, it's a detailed engineering study of an existing road facility, in this case an intersection and also some adjoining road segments. It's looking to diagnose roadway safety risk factors and identify both short-term and long-term countermeasures that can be implemented to improve the safety performance of that location. It requires a lot of work, including on-site daytime, nighttime observations, review of collision data, conflict data, human factors, operations, geometrics, all kinds of things. It's a comprehensive review of the function of the intersection, and like I said, with an eye to look for quantifiable safety improvements, both long-term, short-term. As you mentioned, this is an active police investigation. We do not have, that information as far as what the factors involved in this particular collision were, but that doesn't stop us or prevent us from conducting an in-service roadway safety review. That is just part of the process. The police might take a while to come back with those indicators of what caused that collision, but like I said, we don't need that to undertake this review. And our role within transportation operations and maintenance is a number of things. One of them as part of our Vision Zero program, which you started off saying that no fatality is acceptable. That's the principles of Vision Zero. No injuries are acceptable. So that's our mandate to work to achieve those Vision Zero goals, and that is done through ongoing roadway safety improvements, reviews, and enhancements that we undertake across the city, and then of course through our maintenance. Both with roadway maintenance and transportation operations section maintenance of the signal system, for example, pavement marking signage, is to make sure that all of that infrastructure is maintained in working order to provincial standards and city standards to ensure that it's operating in the way that it must operate to ensure the ongoing safety of the public who are using our roadways.
Thank you so much, Director, for that thorough response. Through you, Vice Chair, as stated in the motion, aside from the horrific crash and the loss of life, residents in the adjacent area were already expressing concern for quite some time about this intersection as pedestrians trying to access Gage Park or leave Gage Park. And since this crash occurred, residents have only been expressing further hesitancy of using this intersection and crosswalks that are there. The sooner our residents can feel more secure with the studies and implemented solutions, the more likely chance will be that they will continue to enjoy the roadways that make up our city and enjoy the quality of life that they deserve as pedestrians, and that work should never be delayed. So again, with many thanks to Acting Director Mike Field for his responsiveness when the accident occurred and my inquiry since then, and for support in this motion coming forward before committee today. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two speakers, Councillor Pearson and Councillor Farr.
Yes, thank you. And through the acting chair, certainly I'm supportive of direction given to staff, but I also want to ask and recognize the importance of certainly safety. But I want to ask staff, we are also going to review this in light of the fact is the LRT not proposed to run down through that stretch, through you, acting chair, to Mr. Field.
Through the chair to the councillor, yes, that's a excellent point with this motion, and the one that's coming next is that both of these intersections are going to play a key role within the construction and operation of the LRT, and thus the one point of the motion is to send the findings of this study to the LRT office of the city, and they can review that information along with Metrolinx and the other partners to see if there's anything that can be utilized or repurposed to help inform or feed into the LRT project, particularly the detailed design of the intersection.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Farr, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the mover as well. I grew up around here, and it's certainly it's a tricky one where our old Indigenous trail winds past Main Street, and the Delta is a unique spot in our usually just grid patterned city traffic scheme, but one of the, I'm very supportive. One of the, I mean, we've had similar issues before. We react as best we can. It can never be perfect, particularly when, and we don't know exactly what was in the system of this driver. We have that coroner investigation that's ongoing. I don't even want to speak ill of the dead, but essentially he too is dead, mowing down 3 of our hardworking citizens. A real tragic occurrence, and the expected reaction from an elected official overseeing the area for sure. At Wellington and some of my colleagues have been here a while will remember at Wellington and Charlton we had a similar incident. I don't even like thinking about it or reliving it. Someone who was new at investing and living in our community was obviously quite enjoying the escarpment, out for a morning jog, and killed at the hairpin turn by a drunk driver. That prompted an immense amount of improvements at the rail trail crossing in that area, and you can see them today. And certainly there's evidence of it with the work of Councillor Jackson. Most recently, and he's continued to work on, I believe it's Upper Ottawa. Is it Upper Gauge or Upper Ottawa? Yeah. So I'm supportive.
Upper Gauge, Councillor.
Upper Gauge, thank you, with Jude and the work you're doing there. So just through you real quick to Mike, you talked about roadway safety risk factors being looked at this, and I think no one likes to be a super sleuth ahead of time, and we want to honor and appreciate the process. Police are investigating, coroners looking at it. This guy stole a Prius, took out a cement pole, and killed a few folks. So when you look at roadway safety risk factors, do you factor in that kind of condition of the individual? Well, we don't know yet just what speed. We do know what the result was when he hit that pole and the other travesties. So how do you measure that when someone's on this or any other road that causes this kind of mayhem?
Through the chair to the councillor, that's a good question. And in this instance, for this in-service roadway safety review, we won't have that information since the investigation is still ongoing, but we have all of the other collisions that occurred in the past, and we receive all of the collision information from a variety of different sources, including Hamilton Police Services, which also provides information as far as the factors that led to the crash, the influences such as if it's impaired driving or distracted driving or speed, that sort of thing. And that information is absolutely used for us in looking at what to diagnose the causations of those collisions and look for improvements that could enhance or protect people from experiencing those types of collisions again. So all that information is absolutely available to us and used for the purposes of our collision investigations and ultimately our the improvements that we plan and put forward.
So you are able to mitigate then and create a safer scenario to prevent these kinds of catastrophic outcomes from impaired or high speeds or reckless driving? And that's an infrastructure thing?
Through the chair of the councillor, that's the principle of Vision Zero, is that no deaths on our roadways are acceptable, and Vision Zero works towards doing everything that we can to prevent those things from happening. One of the key things of Vision Zero is recognizing that people make mistakes and are going to make mistakes, and that the road system or the construction of the road system and that sort of thing needs to have the flexibility to allow for mistakes to be made. I don't want to speak to this incident directly because, like I said, I don't have information. It's not concluded, but I think that just the principles of Vision Zero of zero fatalities on our roadways, zero injuries, is what our ultimate goal is, and constructing and designing streets that have flexibility for people to make mistakes, and that ultimately prevents people from dying on our roads.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Powers, Mr. Chair, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Farr. There's no other speakers. Councillor Nan, closing comments before we go to the vote? None or no?
No further comment. No, thank you.
Thank you. Elsie McIntosh, would you please put up the vote? It was properly moved and second.
Mr. Chair, the vote carries 8-0.
Thank you. Councillor, I transfer the ownership back to you of the committee.
Thank you. Taking back the chair, moving on to item 12.2, which is Main Street West at Dundurn Street South and King Street West at Dundurn Street South, intersection road safety plan in Hamilton Ward 1. Councillor Danko, I understand that you'll be seeking to waive the rules of order to allow this motion to be introduced.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Nan, to waive the rules of order to allow the introduction of the motion for the Main Street West at Dundurn Street South and King Street West at Dundurn Street South intersection road safety plan. Similarly, this is a response to a very severe collision with a pedestrian at this intersection. I'm bringing this forward on behalf of Councillor Wilson. And its timeliness is in order to complete this work as quickly as possible in order to implement any recommended safety improvements at these intersections. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor. Duly moved and seconded before committee for consideration.
Sorry, I thought it was the motion on waiving the rules.
It is.
Okay, sorry, you said for consideration.
Of waiving the rules, which we need 2/3.
Madam Chair, the vote carries 8-0.
Thank you. And Councillor Danko, if you could please introduce the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, this is moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Nan, for Main Street West at Dundurn Street South and King Street West at Dundurn Street South intersection road safety plan in Ward 1. I'm moving this on behalf of Councillor Wilson, who is in attendance. So I would like to turn it over to Councillor Wilson to introduce the motion and make any speak to it as she needs to. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to my colleague, Councillor Danko, for sponsoring this motion. Similarly worded to the previous motion, I will read it out. Whereas the City of Hamilton Vision Zero Action Plan 2019-2025 identifies that no loss of life is acceptable and that traffic fatalities and injuries are preventable. Whereas ensuring the safety of vulnerable road users is a priority. Whereas on March 30th, 2022, a teenage pedestrian was struck and critically injured in a collision at the intersection of Main Street West and Dundurn Street South. Whereas the intersections of Main Street West at Dundurn Street South and King Street West at Dundurn Street South are identified as intersections with a high frequency of collisions in the 2020 annual collision report. And whereas the Transportation Operations and Maintenance Division has conducted roadway safety video analytic examinations of the Main Street West at Dundurn Street South and King Street West at Dundurn Street South intersections in 2021 and is facilitating an in-service road safety review of both intersections jointly to identify possible safety enhancements. Therefore, be it resolved, A, that upon the conclusion of the Main Street West at Dundurn Street South and King Street West at Dundurn Street South intersection road safety review, that the Transportation Operations and Maintenance Division report back to the Public Works Committee with the review's findings, inclusive of costs and a proposed implementation plan. And B, that the Main Street West at Dundurn Street South and King Street West at Dundurn Street South intersection road safety review findings be shared with the city's LRT office for consideration and to identify if any of the proposed safety enhancements could be incorporated into the design of the LRT corridor, if applicable. Thank you. Just a few comments. Each year, this council receives the city's annual collision report, in which we have been advised that the total number of collisions in this city has continuously increased for the last 10 years. The majority of these occur on dry surface conditions. The majority occur during the daylight hours, and more than half of the total collisions occur at intersections. And of those, more than half of those take place at signalized intersections. And specifically, the intersections of King West and Dundurn South and Main West and Dundurn South rank 2 and 3 for pedestrian fatalities and injury collisions. And for vehicular collisions, Main Street West and Dundurn ranks number 2, and then number 10 at King West and Dundurn South. We have a problem, and we've had a problem here for a long time. And Acting Director Field has spoken to his division's mandate. He's spoken to what Vision Zero charges all of us with. And he's also spoken to the relationship of this motion with the future work of LRT and the opportunities that that initiative has to enable us to reimagine and redesign our streets in the order in which they must work, and that is for the safety of our most vulnerable user first, particularly our children. Through the chair, through to Acting Director Field, if you could just take a few minutes, Mr. Field, to describe what is the practice of video analytics and how might it differ from how you have been able to conduct your assessments previously? Thank you.
Through the chair to the councillor, that's a great question. Video analytics is a relatively new method of looking at the safety performance of intersections. It uses cameras, thus the video piece, that is installed for a period of time at an intersection. And unlike traditional collision data, which is what I would phrase as reactive, so it's looking at a collision that has occurred, video analytics looks at and looks for near misses and opportunities where a collision or an injury could have occurred. It looks at speeds, temporal separation, conflict, user vulnerability, order of interactions of vehicles and users, and then it can predict or look at where there were potential near misses, where if a car had turned a split second earlier, or a pedestrian had stepped off a curb a split second earlier, that there would have been an incident. So video analytics is another tool. It's an important tool. It looks at the opportunities for where an issue could have occurred, and it's more proactive than just looking at traditional results-related collision statistics. So it's kind of putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So we have the traditional collision statistics of what's occurring at intersection, and then we have this video analytic information that shows us what could have happened if the circumstances were right. So those two things combined are of real value to us when we start looking at possible enhancements that we could undertake at an intersection to resolve or improve the safety performance of intersections.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Field, what will the consultant be charged with in this case for those two intersections, please?
Through the chair to the councillor, similar or exactly the same as the description of an in-service roadway safety review that I provided for the previous motion. The same thing is going to be done for these two intersections. It is comprehensive review of the function of the intersections. In this case, unlike the other one, we have the availability of the video analytics information. So all of our existing information as far as collisions, the video analytic information, operational information is going to be utilized by a consultant who is going to take an unbiased review of the function of this intersection and then look for opportunities for us to make changes to the intersection, some of them easy, some of them not so easy. being short-term, long-term. And what I want to have is that, as you mentioned, that these two intersections have been safety performance offenders for many, many years. And I want to get them off of that list. And I really see the in-service roadway safety review as being a critical piece in order for us to identify what we need to do as a city to get them off of our collision statistics list.
Through the chair to Acting Director Field, well, that is something in which we share that in common, because I want to get them off the list too, and they've been on the list every year for too long. I approach this work as a public servant, but my work is necessarily informed by being a mother of three, who in the morning and in the afternoon would constantly be aware, and always took comfort knowing that when my kids got in the door, it was another day they got home safely, because our children walk to school, sometimes cycle. And I know I share that sense with all of my colleagues, that it is our first and foremost, it's our duty to advance and to try to do all that we can to ensure the public safety and well-being of every single resident in this city. And that is our duty, and that is my commitment. And I really appreciate, Mr. Field, you assisting with this motion, and I hope my colleagues will see to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I see no further speakers on the list, so it is duly moved and seconded for committee's consideration of the motion.
Farr.
Just waiting for Councillor Farr. It doesn't appear on screen. Might have stepped away.
Madam Chair, the vote carries 7-0.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Wilson, for joining us today. Moving on to 12.3, replacement of deficient sidewalk curbs and driveway approaches, also for Ward 1. Councillor Vanderbeek, will you be moving to waive the rules?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, my understanding is that this is going to stay as a notice of motion. It's just a replacement of some deficient sidewalk curbs and driveway approaches in Ward 1, and so I'm bringing it forward on behalf of Councillor Wilson from Ward 1, and she did confirm to me today that she was going to be leaving it as a notice of motion, so thank you. It's there for committee's consideration for the next meeting.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And with that, any other notices of motion, committee colleagues? Seeing none, we'll then move on to item 13, general information, other business. Amendments to the outstanding business list is 13.1. May I please have a mover and seconder to get the amendments on the floor? Moved by Councillor Pearson, second by Councillor Vanderbeek. Anyone wish to speak to the OBL items? Seeing no indication, we'll then move to vote.
Madam Chair, the vote carries 8-0.
Excellent, thank you. Moving on to private and confidential. Members of committee, do you wish to move into closed session for items 14.1 or 14.2? Seeing nobody saying yes, going in. Okay, so closed session minutes moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Danko. And that's to approve the closed session minutes of March 21st, 2022 as presented. There's no discussion. It's before committee colleagues for vote. And then moving, oh, my apologies, got to wait for the vote tally.
Madam Chair, the vote carries 8-0.
Excellent, thank you. And then item 14.2 is the Transit Maintenance and Storage Facility Policy 11 Contract Extension and Phase 2 Award, Contract Administration Services, Report PW 19006A. And their committee's not desiring to go in camera on that one. So may I please have a mover and seconder to receive the report that would remain confidential. Moved by Councillor Powers, seconded by Councillor Farr. Thank you very much. And it is before you now electronically.
And Madam Chair, the vote carries 8-0.
Excellent. And now we have the last item, which is adjournment. May I please have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Powers and seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. And as you are voting for that electronically, many thanks to all staff who prepared all the reports for this committee meeting. Thanks again to the legislative clerk staff as well. And thank you to all the public members who joined us virtually and online. That pass. Excellent. Carried. Take care, colleagues.